If you want to be a great real estate salesperson, I'm talking about a salesperson who reaches their highest potential, there are 8 rules to follow in order to reach that level of sales mastery. And so I'm going to go through all 8 in this video. And if you have questions, certainly you can throw them in the comments beneath this video. Number 1 is to prospect every day. And that means even on the days you don't feel like it, because the reality, as we both, I think, would agree, is that there are going to be more days that you don't feel like prospecting than there are going to be days that you feel like it. You see, motivation comes and goes, but we have to be disciplined enough to prospect every single day. That is our job. So much so that we look at a day that goes by when you're not prospecting is a day not worked. Amongst all other things, if we look at the vital few, we're talking about the essential things that drive your business, that are of the highest priority. And I say this with great love and great passion to try and help you win at the highest level. Prospecting has to be that thing that happens every day, no matter what. No matter what. If nothing else, you're having new conversations with new prospects to put those prospects into the top of your sales funnel. Rule number 2, telling is not selling. And so many new people get into this business of real estate sales and they start to tell people everything. Well, let me ask you, do you want to be told what to do? I don't think so. And so much so that there are some principles around communication that we know to be true, which is people never believe what you tell them. They have to have their guard up. So they don't believe the words coming out of your mouth. And when you try to tell somebody something, the law of psychological reactance kicks in and says, well, if you're trying to tell me to do this, I'm more motivated to actually do the exact opposite. So nobody believes what you tell them. The second principle is people often believe what other people tell them. So it's a lot more likely that people believe what maybe someone has said about you that they find more believable than it coming directly from you. That makes sense, right? A personal referral or a personal recommendation. Hey, I worked with this agent before. They do great work. That's more believable than you saying, hey, I do great work. You should hire me. I'm a great agent. Their BS radar is going off because we know people never believe what you tell them. They often believe what other people tell them. And then principle number 3 is people always believe what they tell themselves. So when we look at this second rule of sales, telling is not selling, what we then have to do is say, okay, well, what's the opposite of telling? And we quickly find out we have to ask questions. Specifically, what we teach the agents that we coach is we have to ask what we call reverse selling style questions, which are Socratic in nature. And what they are designed to do is to elicit self-persuasion. We ask questions in a way to get the prospect to sell themselves on the ideas, on the actions, on the things that they would like to do, the things that they would not like to do, and we stay out of it. Rule number 3, which is to support the prospect's autonomy. So what does this mean, Brandon? Well, here's what we know. We know that we shouldn't break the law of psychological reactance where we try to force ourselves into a situation by using hard sales tactics and closing strategies, because that just elicits psychological reactance. The more we try to pressure somebody into doing something, the more motivated they are to do the exact opposite. That's why we know old school sales tactics no longer work. What does work, now listen closely, giving the prospect the perception of control by supporting their autonomy to make their own decision. Now, if you think about what I'm saying, most of the time, most people aren't used to being communicated this way, whether it be in a relationship with one of your friends, your spouse, a team member, certainly in a selling environment. People aren't used to the other person giving up the perceived control to the other person. They're not used to that. And so in a selling environment, when we use language that supports the prospect's autonomy, here's what happens. More times than not, they comply with the very thing that we want them to do without us having to pressure them. As an example, You might say, Mr. Prospect, listen, I'm not sure if this would make sense or not, but I'd be happy to meet with you one day. I'll share with you what I'm doing with my clients to get their properties sold at a price that works for them or more. And then you could decide if maybe working with me makes sense or not. Because let's face it, you're not going to do anything unless it made sense. Am I right? And when you can communicate that way, that supports the prospect's autonomy, where they feel in control, they don't feel like they're being sold, what you will find is that more prospects take you up and they comply with what it is that you're asking for. Rule number 4, sell the cost of inaction. I think a lot of real estate agents get this wrong. They constantly are trying to position their argument for someone selling their home based on, hey, here's where the market is at. You can look at all the upside. However, that's fine and that works sometimes. What I have found to be more powerful than that is selling the cost of doing nothing. In other words, we're using loss aversion, because what do we know about people? People are much more motivated by the fear of loss than they are at the opportunity of gain. Meaning this, if we could communicate with the seller differently and we can explain to them, hey, if we look ahead to the marketplace and if home values are at all-time highs and we believe that home values over time will trend downward, are we okay leaving $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 on the table? If so, if you're good with that, fine. There's a lot of sellers that aren't willing to do that. And we sell the gap between where they are now and where their property values may go down to in the future. Well, that's the cost of inaction versus positioning the argument of like, hey, sell now because look at how much you can gain. We sell the inverse of that. Look at how much is at stake to lose if we do nothing. The choice, of course, is up to you. Rule number 5, we invite prospects to say no. This is a very difficult one, I think, for newer salespeople, because I always ask this question. They always get the answer right conceptually. Emotionally, they always get it wrong. Here's what I mean. If a prospect was never, ever going to do business with you, when would you want to know that? Every single real estate agent that I ask always says right now. And I say, BS. I know you conceptualize and telling me you want to know now, but you're not doing the actions and behaviors that you put forth. Tell me emotionally you're not open to accepting that fact. Meaning this, we have what we call happy ears. We only ask questions to get answers that we want to hear, and we stay away from the questions that present the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And the truth is, there's only about 1 or 2 or 3% of the marketplace ready to transact business right now. The truth is, the vast majority of those people aren't going to do business with you. They're going to do business with someone else. And so what happens when you invite prospects to tell you no, you make it safe for the prospects to tell you the truth. You will get the truth. And 2 things will happen from that. When inviting prospects to tell you the truth, and you invite them to say, hey, listen, if it doesn't make sense and you're not open to at least meeting, that's okay. You won't hurt my feelings. You can tell me, and you invite them to tell you no. 2 things will occur. 1, you'll stop chasing prospects that will never do business with you. You can get out of the chase game. You could stop landing in voicemail jail. You can get out of that rat race of hopium where you're just chasing prospects that you didn't make it safe for them to tell you no. So they had to be polite and to say, yeah, just call me back here or there sometime in the future. And you just chase them. And they never answer your calls. They always avoid your text messages. You can stop doing that. And then the second thing that happens, which is magical, when you invite prospects to tell you no, you start to generate amazing opportunities, because those prospects, when you stop beating around the bush and you invite them to say no, those prospects that push back present themselves as the real opportunities. You could start to sort the red gumballs from the blue gumballs, and you can invite prospects to tell you the truth. And when you get the truth, you find out, wow, this is a great opportunity. Now I know what a lead is and what a lead is not. Rule number 6, no pain, no sale. Listen, I've said it 1,000 times before, but our job as real estate agents is not, I repeat, not to convince people to sell their house. Our job is to find people who have already decided to sell their house and earn their business. And so many times on coaching calls and coaching sessions, I'll get questions. Well, what if they say they don't want to sell? What's the objection handler for that? They're in no pain. And so if they're in no pain to move, it is virtually impossible to make a sale. Nothing that you're going to say is going to result in you setting that appointment or taking the listing if there's no pain from the prospect's perspective to make the move. And so we forget this, that oftentimes we can't help everyone. Certainly we can't help people solve a pain point, which is to make a move because of a life event. They need something bigger. They need something smaller because they got a divorce. They just had a baby. They just got married. They just had a death in the family. They just got a new job. That's the pain, the motivation that we're looking to solve through the service that we offer. Remember, the service that we offer is the listing and the selling of homes. So if someone doesn't have the motivation to move, there's no sale to be had. Number 7, leave your ego at home. Well, what do I mean by this? I think a lot of agents get this twisted. They have a need to be right, and as a result, they leave hundreds of thousands of potential income on the table because they want to argue with clients to prove, hey, I'm smart and you're dumb. It's kind of like a Matilda moment. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie with Danny DeVito, and he says to his daughter, Matilda, listen, I'm old, you're young. I'm smart, you're dumb. And this is kind of how I see a lot of agents communicating with prospects when they're communicating. The prospects will bring something up and the agent, because they have a need to be right, get into an argument with the prospect. No, that's wrong. That's not what's happening with the market. We have to be nurturing. Prospects don't know what they don't know. And our need for approval, our need to be right, that ego that comes up sometimes gets in the way of us getting what we want, which is to acquire a new client, to help somebody successfully move. But our ego gets in the way. We want to fight. We want to prove that they're wrong and that we're right. Rule number 8, disqualify hard so the close is easy. Another one that I think a lot of agents really, really mess up. So what do I mean by disqualifying hard? What I mean by that is this. We talked about the power of inviting people to tell you no. And when we're disqualifying prospects, all we're doing is we're creating an environment where we can communicate in the truth. And so qualifying prospects is constantly looking for the prospect to say yes. And when you do that, oftentimes prospects do what? They tell you no, or they give you some type of an objection. Hey, if you like what I have to say, will you list your house with me? That is a qualifying question. A disqualifying question is, listen, if after our meeting, things go the way that I think that they're gonna go, would you be opposed to getting started right away? Would you be totally against the idea of getting the house on the market right away? Or better yet, Mr. Prospect, based on our meeting and things making sense, you're not looking to get started right away, are you? That's a disqualifying question. This is how we totally remove objections from the equation. Because when you communicate from a point of disqualifying and the prospect pushes back, their objection actually becomes their motivation. Think about the objection to that question. Mr. Prospect, let me ask you this. If after our meeting, everything that we talk about makes sense and we decide that working together has value for both of us, you're not looking to get the house on the market right away, are you? Well, yeah, quite the contrary. In fact, that is exactly what we're looking to do. And that becomes their objection, which elicits their actual motivation. So when you disqualify upfront hard, it makes the closing process very, very simple. And when we're at the listing presentation, we can simply say, Mr. Prospect, we had a conversation to say, hey, listen, if we thought things went well, that you had mentioned that you were looking to get started right away. Are there any other questions that you have, or does it make sense to go ahead and get started?